Hi everyone. It was really great to review your submissions this month. I had a great time looking through all your work, and there was some really fantastic standout work. So congratulations to all of you. Congratulations also just for doing it. It's always tough to put something like this together, to do it in under a time frame, but it's really great to just keep doing this over and over again. This is where you're really going to sharpen your skills and keep pushing yourself. So well done to all of you. So for this kind of feedback session, Brian and I had discussed what we thought might be the most useful. And as I was reviewing all of your work, I found some common themes that I saw in a lot of different submissions that I thought, instead of pointing out a couple submissions specifically to sort of just showcase what could have been better here or there, I thought, why don't I kind of focus on a few topics that I saw in a lot of people's work and give a bit of a deep dive into each of these. So hopefully this will help contextualize some of the feedback and also just be useful for anyone else who's watching this either now or down the road. So there was 4 main points that I saw that I kept kind of repeating in a lot of feedback. So the first is on MIDI programming. This is programming your samples. This is getting into all of your CC parameters and really trying to finesse and create a great performance in each individual line. The second I saw was in making the overall mix sound a bit more immersive. So with this in particular, I think that a lot of people could have benefited from creating a greater sense of depth in their mix. So we're going to look at that and kind of the use of reverb and how we can create a more 3-dimensional mix. A big one that I saw was transitions between sections. So this was, a lot of people wrote great music that really suited that particular moment, but then the individual sections of the clip and the music didn't really seem to connect. So a big thing on kind of transitioning from one to the next and making sure that that flows. And the last point, which is really quite a big pursuit, but this is in the development of the arranging and orchestration. So I saw also great number of projects that had well-developed themes, well thought out structure, but in general, it just felt a bit light. And so I think there's a lot more that could be done to sort of support the narrative and give a bit of nuance to each section. So let's start with MIDI programming. So this really is about how much you can use your samples and how you can use all the parameters that are available. So most samples have access to modulation, which typically changes the timbre of the sound. So it will be kind of the dynamic level. As well as expression, which is more of a volume knob typically. And those two together can really help make a convincing performance. Your MIDI volume that you can use, which is typically the output of your plugin, the output volume. So this won't affect timbre, but this has a big control on the overall level, and you can use that to balance, as well as any other parameter that you have available to you. So this might be vibrato, or maybe the amount of portamento that you can use. All of these parameters can really be useful in taking a single line and creating some variety within that so that you can make it sound convincing. So let's have a look now at one project which I felt that the writing was great and the mix came through, but the performance in general just seemed a little bit flat. So I thought this was one that really would have benefited from a bit more attention to detail in the programming.
A man's destiny, the wise men say, is written in the stars. Mine was written in blood and ash. I was born in a peaceful village where honest families tilled rich earth and happy children played in golden fields. My father forged tools with gentle hands that never known violence, only hard work. The raiders came like wolves. Crystal clear streams ran dark with the blood of the innocent. They nailed my father to wooden beams, a gentle soul butchered by savages. A crying infant was plucked from the arms of the dead and carried across the world. They forged me in violence. Anger became my strength, pain my teacher. The Romans have a saying, uccidere aut mori, avenge or die. Now I stand before thousands who cheer for blood. Ave, Caesar, morituri te salutan. Hail, Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. But I do not salute Caesar, for I am the last son of a village that burned. And every man who falls brings me closer to reclaiming my name. But for now, at least, I am the tiger.
Okay guys, so let's talk through how to make your demos better. I'm going to show you two examples. The first is going to be from how to kind of layer multiple sets of samples to give a lot more realism and depth. And the second is going to be a focus on solo instruments in particular. So let me play through this a little bit, and then we're going to deep dive into the strings melody. Great. So if we look at this example, first thing I have is I'm spending a bit of time on each individual region, and I'm really going into my modulation, expression, and main volume, or my CC7 MIDI volume. So I've made sure that this is legato, it's overlapping. This is Cinematic Studio Strings Violin 1. So I know how to use this sample library. I know how to get great legato transitions out of it. One thing I'm doing here is I'm also utilizing its sort of portamento function. So this is going to help give a little bit more realism. You'll notice this note here is has a much lower velocity. That's to trigger this portamento function. So adding a little bit of variety in the line itself is really going to help out and give a bit more realism. Then the other point here is in layering multiple sets of samples together. So first, I usually start with the sections. So this is the first and seconds together. Then we have the solos. And if we layer these together, it really helps bring out the detail from the solos as well as the kind of weight and body from the sections. Now on top of that, I'm also adding an ensemble patch. This is from Spitfire's Abbey Road samples here. You can hear once I add the ensemble patches, I'm also getting a lot more out of this and kind of more weight together. So this is one point, is both in really dealing with the details of your CC parameters, your modulation, expression, MIDI volume, as well as any other parameters that you can utilize, such as reverb or portamento functions, things like that. Really try to spend a lot of time and finesse these to get the most out of a line. That's going to make such a big difference in kind of the realism of your demo overall. So that was one thing that I saw in quite a lot of people's submissions. The other point I want to focus on is programming solo instruments. So I'm going to play through this next section and focus on this in particular with the flute, just because this is one, it's a single note, but I'm going to show you exactly what I did to it to get quite a bit of realism out of it. So it's a single note, but I wanted to focus in on this just because there is a lot of attention that I had to pay to this single note. And so this is also, just for reference, it's Cinewinds alto flute. And so the main thing I did here to get this sort of realism out of it is this pitch bend. So this is helping it to give a bit of flavor, and it makes it sound a bit more soloistic. So the other thing I've got in here is you can see the breath, this CC2. For many libraries, this is a vibrato function. You can see I'm ramping up the vibrato on this towards the end of that phrase. And then with this one, the modulation expression didn't have a huge effect on the timbre in the way that I wanted to. So I used this CC7 volume to kind of bring this note in and bring it out a little bit at the end. One more time. Now, one other tool that I used for this was a bit of stereo delay. So I like to use this as a simple trick to kind of just give a bit more sort of space around a line. So what I might do here, and by the way, I've totally stolen this from Alan Meyerson. I saw it in some tutorial that he did at some point. I set this stereo delay and I offset these parameters for each side. So quarter note and then maybe a dotted eighth. And then I feed back a bit into each other and I sort of adjust these to taste. So this is quite light on this. But notice how that gives it quite a bit of ambience around that line. So that's something that can also help this kind of punch through in the mix and just make that line sound a bit more interesting, even if I was working with a sample that's fairly flat on its own. So just wanted to use this as an example because it drives this point home very nicely, where really utilizing quite a few parameters, and in the end I have a lot of control over this sound. So next, let's talk about the mix and how to make this a bit more immersive. So once again, this is something I saw quite a lot where people might have a good balance on their mix. So generally, like the volumes were all kind of balanced and you could hear everything, but it all typically sounded quite upfront and everything sounded like it was in the same position. So if you imagine your mix like you're looking at a stage, if I put everything up front, it's as if I have the entire orchestra standing on the edge of the stage. And it's going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to be very difficult to mix as well. Whereas if I spread the orchestra out and I use the whole room, I'll have a much greater sense of depth. So typically my percussion, my brass is going to be much further away than my strings would be. So I want to emulate this using reverb, and we can use reverb to create that sense of distance. So here's a project that I thought did really well in producing and in programming the samples, and the mix sounded good, but everything just sounded quite upfront, and I thought this could have benefited from a bit of depth in the mix overall.
A man's destiny, the wise men say, is written in the stars. Mine was written in blood and ash. I was born in a peaceful village where honest families tilled the rich earth and happy children played in golden fields. My father forged tools with gentle hands that never known violence, only hard work. The raiders came like wolves. Crystal clear streams ran dark with the blood of the innocent. They nailed my father to wooden beams, a gentle soul butchered by savages. A crying infant was plucked from the arms of the dead and carried across the world. They forged me in violence. Anger became my strength, pain my teacher. The Romans have a saying, uccidere aut mori, avenge or die. Now I stand before thousands who cheer for blood. Ave, Caesar, morituri te salutant. Hail, Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. But I do not salute Caesar, for I am the last son of a village that burned. And every man who falls brings me closer to reclaiming my name. But for now, at least, I am the tiger.
Right, so let's talk about depth.
Hi, it's me again. I'm just going to interrupt briefly before we go into that depth. I hope you're enjoying this video. Well, you certainly should be. It's fantastic. And I just want to say, if you are, please remember to like and, if you can, subscribe and hit the notification bell. That'll make sure that you don't miss out on any more of this great content that we're preparing for you. But also it will help us tremendously because the video will reach more people the way that the algorithm works. It'll grow our community, make it richer and more valuable. And of course, that will help us then to have the resources we need to be able to do more of this great stuff for you. So it's a wonderful virtuous circle from which all of us will benefit. And that's what the QTube is all about. So thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Let's hear more from Mike.
So another thing that I noticed in a lot of submissions is kind of a lack of depth in the overall mix and lack of sort of immersiveness in the mix. So I made this comment quite a lot, and I think really it comes down to particular attention to using reverb and to using reverb correctly. So in this quick example, I've got this section of the track where it's mostly kind of my top melody in my strings, my winds, and some harmony in the brass. So let's have a quick look. I've sort of pared this demo down a little bit just so that we can simplify it. And I've got this section here with the winds, brass, and strings. So currently these are just all at unity level and have no reverb on them. So let's play that. So the only reverb that we hear are the reverbs that are baked into those samples. So what I did here, just as a quick demo, I've tried to make these samples fairly dry using a bit of close mic positions and that sort of thing. But they don't need to be completely dry. I still want some sense of the hall they were recorded in, especially if they were recorded in a very nice place. I'm going to utilize a bit of that. So to utilize reverb correctly, what I want to do is think about the distance between these. So my brass, I'm going to send further back, and my strings, I'm going to keep quite close and up front. So in order to do this, let me turn all these reverbs on. And then the strings, I'm going to give just a bit of send to. So if I solo the strings on their own, so that's quite nice. I'm going to kind of leave this as sort of my default up close position. It's not affecting too much. It's not making it sound too far away, but it's helping to blend it into this space. And then with the brass, let's try to get this where it sounds a bit further away. So I can stay on kind of the extreme end and give this quite a bit of reverb. So, and what's going to also help this is if I reduce a bit of this volume here. So if I take this down, it's going to sound further away. Once again, sort of before. Sounds quite dry and up front. And then a bit of reverb and a bit of reduction in the volume here. Now you can really hear that it sounds like they're coming from the back of the hall. So then I'll sort of split the difference with the winds, and I'll give them a bit of a space sort of in between these two. First, we can hear the winds without any reverb. So quite dry and up front. And then I'll add a bit of reverb, and I'll also take down a little bit of volume here. That helps give a little bit of distance. Maybe there's a little too much reverb on that. But now when I play the 3 all together, instead of them all sounding up front and kind of flat, now they'll sound like they have a bit of depth to them. So, and I can adjust these volumes a bit to taste, but this is how I'm going to create a bit of depth in that mix. So next, I want to talk about transitions between the sections. So once again, this is something where I saw quite a lot of people would write great music for individual sections of the clip, but that music didn't seem to kind of flow together. So it didn't really seem like one was leading into the next. It felt more like they were individual sections that were kind of music edited together. So one of the main things that I think about in creating musical transitions is I want to essentially make the end of one section feel like the beginning of the next. So this might be through harmony. It might also be through your melodic writing, even through the way that you use rhythm. But I want to make sure that that feels like a very musical transition and that each section is sort of leading into the next one. So here's an example where I thought all the thematic ideas and the different moods that they created for the individual sections were great, but I thought this could have benefited a little bit more from creating smooth transitions between those.
A man's destiny, the wise men say, is written in the stars. Mine was written in blood and ash. I was born in a peaceful village where honest families tilled the rich earth and happy children played in golden fields. My father forged tools with gentle hands that never known violence, only hard work. The raiders came like wolves. Crystal clear streams ran dark with the blood of the innocent. They nailed my father to wooden beams, a gentle soul butchered by savages. A crying infant was plucked from the arms of the dead and carried across the world. They forged me in violence. Anger became my strength, pain my teacher. The Romans have a saying, uccidere aut morit, avenge or die. Now I stand before thousands who cheer for blood. Ave, Caesar, morituri te salutan. Hail, Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. But I do not salute Caesar, for I am the last son of a village that burned. And every man who falls brings me closer to reclaiming my name. But for now, at least, I am the tiger.
So speaking about transitions, I wanted to use this example from the short film that I scored called Somewhere in Between. This film, I had the opportunity to record a full orchestra for this, and it's something that I really try to incorporate in my orchestral writing, is making these seamless transitions through different cues and really trying to make everything flow and feel super fluid. So looking at the score for this, I just want to point out, I have this kind of section that comes before. We're dropping into sort of halfway through this main melody, and this is sort of the main theme at this big climactic section of the film. And as it goes through, I'm then shifting kind of on this downbeat here into the next cut and into the next section of the cue. So the point that I want to make here is how I make these seamless transitions. I want essentially the downbeat of this to feel like a very musical conclusion to this whole phrase, while simultaneously I make the pickup into this next section feel like it's leading into the next section. So this transition on this bar is essentially the ending of one section while simultaneously the beginning of the next, and I try to kind of suture that transition together. So before we listen, what you can kind of look out for in particular is this line that comes through in the violas, the celli, as well as in the trombone and in the horns. This is a kind of leading note, which acts as a sort of counterline to the end of the melody, but it's also the leading tone into the beginning of the next melody. So let's have a listen. So just want to point that out. This is something that I think is really important in all of your cues. I saw a lot of great work with people making really nice moods for each individual section, but then they felt like they were sort of edited together. It didn't feel like there was a lot of continuity between them. So this is what I mean by kind of making those smooth musical transitions. And last, I want to look at the arranging and orchestration. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this one. This is something that, as I mentioned, is really a long pursuit. This isn't something that you're going to pick up in a couple months. It's something that you're going to study, and over years, you're going to develop a much greater sense of how you can arrange and orchestrate. But the benefit of this is it's like being able to paint with more colors. So the greater your understanding of orchestration and how to write for an ensemble will really pay back, and not just in orchestral music, but arranging overall, whether you're writing hybrid scores or purely synth scores. The idea of arranging translates across all of this. So what I mean by this is I saw quite a lot of work that had great ideas sort of sketched out, like the melody and the strings supported by the brass, but it felt a bit empty. So I'm going to show a few ways that we can kind of help develop this a bit further. First, I want to show one example of, this is a submission that I thought did a great job at kind of having thematic ideas and having everything laid out really well, but it just felt a little bit unsupported. And so once again, the more access to kind of different colors, the more control and command you have over the ensemble you're writing for, the greater nuance you can use to support the narrative from moment to moment and create a real sense of arc within each of those sections. So let's have a look at that submission.
A man's destiny, the wise men say, is written in the stars. Mine was written in blood and ash. I was born in a peaceful village where honest families tilled the rich earth and happy children played in golden fields. My father forged tools with gentle hands that never known violence, only hard work. The raiders came like wolves. Crystal clear streams ran dark with the blood of the innocent. They nailed my father to wooden beams, a gentle soul butchered by savages. A crying infant was plucked from the arms of the dead and carried across the world. They forged me in violence. Anger became my strength, pain my teacher. The Romans have a saying, uccidere aut mori, avenge or die. Now I stand before thousands who cheer for blood. Ave, Caesar, morituri te salutant. Hail, Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. But I do not salute Caesar, for I am the last son of a village that burned. And every man who falls brings me closer to reclaiming my name. But for now, at least, I am the tiger.
So talking about arranging. So arranging was another big comment that I made for a lot of submissions. So just to clarify on this, what I saw was a lot of great ideas and a lot of great work that was sketched out really nicely. So thinking like, oh, I want my melody in the strings here with the brass supporting and the harmony, that sort of thing. So what I'm kind of diving into is how you can flesh this out a bit more and how you can think of developing this over a line. So for instance, I might have seen a section where someone kept their melody in their violins throughout, and it was supported by the brass throughout that section, but without much development from the beginning to the end of that section. So I've chosen this section of this track to look at, where I start with quite a simple arrangement in my lead line, and then with the bass line supporting. Then I fill this out in the middle with these kind of arpeggiated figures. And then I've also got the woodwinds, which are doubling this and helping to build this up. So you can see all the strings are kind of these orange notes, and all the winds are the green ones that we'll see. So I'll play through this section. So this, as I was saying, this has got some nice development going on, harmonizing these lines. This flute line is also doubling one of the synths that's helping to kind of bring this line out. So let's look at sort of the other half of this arrangement in the track. So that's kind of my main sort of orchestral stuff going on. And then in this section, I've also got a lot of sort of big sound design percussion, some kind of, I think of it as like EDM percussion, like sort of sub kicks and stuff like that, as well as lots of synth pads, some arpeggiators, all that sort of stuff. So this is helping to also fill out a lot of that section of the arrangement. So now let's listen to this section all together, which draws together all of these aspects and tries to develop this arrangement throughout that section to make it feel really big and full. So once again, thank you guys so much for all of your submissions. I really enjoyed going through it, and it was great to see the level of work that came through with all of these. So congratulations again on that. I hope you like this sort of format, and I hope that you found this feedback helpful. So if you did find it helpful, I'll give a quick shameless self-promotion here. I do have an online course, and I cover a lot of these topics in there. So if you think that this might be something you're interested in, and if you found this format helpful to you, then maybe that's something you'd want to check out as well. So thanks so much again, and I look forward to seeing a lot more of your work in the future. So thanks so much, and well done, everyone.
So thanks, Mike. That was a absolutely brilliant piece of feedback. And as you can see, we're trying to up our game all the time in terms of the feedback that we give to you. We have a current opportunity, which is a Christmas TV ad for a retail chain, Harpwell and Sons, which is available now on our website. It's free for members, and the submission process is free for everybody. So that'll get you expert feedback, the opportunity to potentially receive a string quartet recording session, and a giveaway from Fracture Sounds, which will be for one of the composers that submit. So definitely worth taking part. You'll have great practice and something wonderful for your portfolio. And I can definitely vouch for Mike's course. which is linked to in the description down below. So please use that link if you're considering signing up for the course or just want to take a look. We also have a video on our channel from one of the students who took part in that. So a completely independent bit of feedback on the course. So yeah, definitely worth looking at if you want to up your game as a composer. So thanks for listening. Take care. Bye for now.